Face Hunter for Hearthstone's newest mode, Hearthstone Twist. This was the version that I came up with, and really when I thought about all of the different expansions that make up the current iteration of Hearthstone Twist, I wanted to grab all of the best Face Hunter cards and really just put them in one single deck. So a couple of things I want to point out here. We're going to take a quick trip through the list. Running an Adorable Infestation as well as a bunch of bananas. Be able to get some buffs down on the board to make our minions a little bit bigger. That means we get to punch face just a little bit harder. One copy of Demon Companion. I really just dropped this in to be able to round out the deck. I needed one more card, and an extra one drop seemed like it was going to be a good way to go here. A couple of Trinket Trackers to be able to tutor these one-cost spells. Card draw is something that you're going to find as a premium in this particular version, and so those slotted in really, really nicely. A couple of copies of Warpletinger here. Not super great on turn 1, but looking a little bit farther down the list, you see I've included a couple of copies of Scavenger's Ingenuity, and that gives us 2 extra beasts that we can potentially hit. And if you can play Scavenger's Ingenuity on 2 and hit a Warpletinger, then on turn 3 for 1 mana you can get down 2 4/4s. It ends up being really strong when it works out that way. 2 copies of Aerosmith, as well as 2 copies of the Kolkar Pack Runner. You're going to notice this is a very spell-heavy deck, and if we have these minions on the board, it helps us to get just that little bit of extra value out of the spells that we really want to be playing anyway. 2 copies of Imprisoned Fellmaw. I'm really, really high on this card. Of course, the earlier in the game that you play it, the stronger it's going to be, but this is just going to be an insane 2-drop in the current Hearthstone Twist format, I think. It's been performing pretty well so far. We're going to have to see over time how things continue to work out. A couple of copies of Quick Shot as well as 2 copies of Aim Shot here. So one of the things that I try to keep in mind is it feels like Face Hunter kind of lost the actual face damage over time. It became more about buffs and putting minions on the board and not so much about the reach and the damage from hand. I feel like that's going to be pretty important in this format. So I wanted to include these 2 copies of Quick Shot and Aim Shot. One side note here, I've never actually had an empty hand with this deck. And so you don't necessarily get to draw a card off of this. It's just damage to be able to send into your opponent's face. You can bypass a taunt. And 2 mana for 3 damage is better than 2 mana for 2 damage, say from a hero power. So again, I've been pretty happy with that particular choice. We're also running the Wild Seed package here. That's going to be 2 copies of Spirit Poacher, 2 copies of Wild Spirits. Wild Seeds have just been really, really good cards. Of course, if you hit the Stag and get the weapon, that's going to be great for your Face Hunter strategy. But really, there's just so much value within those cards. Absolutely no reason not to run them here. Renling's Hunting Rifle. This is just a really, really solid card. Being able to get the Hunter Secrets. You have to keep in mind that the Hunter Secret pool is significantly bigger than it was before. And so you want to keep in mind what your potential options are going to be. You're going to be able to discover 1 of 3 secrets. So keep in mind, we've got Cat Trick, Emergency Maneuvers, Explosive Trap, Freezing Trap, Hidden Meaning, Ice Trap, Motion Denied, Open the Cages, Pack Tactics, Wandering Monster, and Zombies. So there's no way that you're going to be able to actually guarantee exactly what you want off of the Renling's Rifle. But usually you can get a really good secret. It's just extra value. It's a way to be able to punch your opponent in the face. The card was really good when it was in Standard. I think it's going to be good now in this particular deck. There's just so many good options, and then you get a choice for whatever's going to best fit the situation that you're in. Barak Kodobane also included in the deck. We don't really care about the 3/5 body. It's really just about the card draw, being able to draw the 1, 2, and 3 mana spells here. Again, not a whole lot of card draw in this deck. I've never actually run out of cards, and I've had games where I never even drew the Barak Kodobane, so probably not necessarily core in the deck, but still a solid card. And then we've also tried to work the deck so that we have a higher chance to be able to draw Quick Shots and Aim Shots. I believe it's going to be a 50-50. We only have 4 3-cost spells, and then we only have 2 2-cost spells here on these. So it gives us a good opportunity to be able to draw that reach and be able to close out the game when we're looking to finish the game right around turn 6, 7, and 8, as Face Hunter really always has. 2 copies of the Trampling Rhino coming back. These are really, really good if your opponent's going to be playing the smaller size minions on their side of the board. You get to remove their minion and a bunch of damage goes face. Keeping in mind, these can also be drawn with the Scavenger's Ingenuity, which turns this thing into a 5-mana 8/8 that can potentially be doing anywhere from 0 to 7 damage into your opponent's face, depending on what kind of minions they have on the board. Could just be good against removal. If your opponent has a big taunt, you play this just to get the taunt out of the way, and then the rest of your minions and potentially your hero get to attack face. Really solid. And then I've included Beaststalker Tavish. Again, you have to keep in mind that the secret pool is significantly bigger now than what we're used to seeing from like the standard format. But just the fact that you get 2 improved secrets and it's a discover, really what I found is that you can discover something that's going to be good for the situation that you're in. So again, maybe not necessarily needed, but I feel like Beaststalker Tavish is just a really, really strong card, and I wanted to be able to try it out in this list. So this is the list as is. Now, I also wanted to offer up a couple of thoughts about Hearthstone Twist in general. Number one, I would recommend that you do not craft any cards. We're going to have this version of Hearthstone Twist for a little over a month, and then the Hearthstone Twist season is going to rotate. And so if you craft any of these cards that you're missing, it could be a very, very short-term craft, and then you might feel like you wasted your dust. So things to keep in mind, some of the cards you craft not going to be playable in Standard. So if Standard is your main mode, now in addition to Twist, then you're definitely going to want to check out whether or not these cards are going to be legal in Standard. And then, of course, if Wild is a format that you're interested in, then potentially you could craft any of these. They would still be playable in Wild, but keep in mind that the Wild decks, the power level is even greater because of the number of expansions. And so you don't necessarily want to craft cards that aren't going to do you any good in these other formats. So again, just something to keep in mind there. Now, in the spirit of that, I wanted to point out a couple of changes you can make to the deck if you don't have some of these legendaries. So when I'm thinking about Renling's Rifle, again, I think the card is going to be good. If you don't have it, I would say don't craft it. Things that you could consider putting in its place based on what you see that you're playing against and what you think might help. You could potentially run Dragonbane. Everybody has access to this card. You can see that it's in the core set. If you happen to have a Jungle Jammer, you could run 1 copy of this. Just the weapon to be able to hit your opponent in the face. Again, we're playing Face Hunter. And then on the Death Rattle, you'll potentially be able to get some type of beast off of these spells that we're going to be casting, again, just in a spell-heavy deck. And then potentially, I think you could also just run a Piercing Shot. The value of this card is going to depend on how many decks we're playing against have minions on the board to be able to remove those minions and then bounce the excess damage into your opponent's face. Certainly, if the meta comes down to a lot of decks that are playing a lot of small minions, this card is going to increase in value and be able to go into the opponent's face more. So really for Renlings and also the Beaststalker Tavish, I feel like you could put in the Piercing Shot, again, the Dragonbane, or the Jungle Jammer. So a couple of different options for you there. The Barak Kodobane, the card draw is really the reason why I like it in the deck, and it's very, very specific card draw, being able to tutor out a 1, 2, and 3 cost spell. You can't necessarily create that with any other card in the deck, but you could consider maybe running like a Conjured Arrow. After turn 6, you would be able to draw 2 cards, potentially. No spell power in the deck, so 2 cards is going to be the limit there. And then we also have the option of running the Furious Howl. Again, when I'm playing the deck, I'm not running out of cards. I think for me, at most, this would draw 2. In a lot of cases, it would only draw 1 card. But it's something that you could slot into the deck if you don't have the Barak Kodobane. And then also, you could potentially run a second copy of Demon Companion. Outside of that, you're going to notice that all of these cards are either common or rare. I believe with the exception of Wild Spirits, this is an epic card, but it is playable in Standard. It's still played, I think, in every Standard Hunter deck. And Wild, I'm not as sure about, not necessarily a Wild guy, but the rest of the cards are going to be rares or commons, so should be a relatively cheap deck here. And but definitely do not craft these expensive legendaries if you don't already have them. You definitely don't want to waste your dust. Right off the bat, it looks like we're going to be playing against Priest here. This could really be anything. There's just so many different options for decks in the Twist format. So our mulligan is really going to focus on our own game plan rather than trying to counteract what our opponent is doing. So we don't have a clue what our opponent's doing. So in general, I would want to keep the Wild Seed cards. That's going to be Spirit Poacher as well as Wild Spirits. I also like keeping Renling's Rifle, if you have that included in your version of the deck. And then I think Scavenger's Ingenuity is also a keep. One of the things that I've noticed somewhat surprisingly to me is that it's not really important with this deck to have a 1-drop. I don't think I even keep 1-drops when I'm offered those in the mulligan. And we have an option to just go ahead and play the coin and get a Scavenger's Ingenuity. But I don't think that's going to be the play. We're just going to pass. We're going to Ingenuity on 2. And then if we can hit a Warpletinger, our turn 3 is going to be a Pack Runner as well as the 2 4/4s. And you can see, fortunately here, that was the hit. Second Scavenger's Ingenuity is going to be 2 out of 3 to hit a Trampling Rhino, which again could be good if our opponent's going to be putting minions on the board. Not totally sure what we're playing against. I know there were some theory-crafted versions of like an OTK Priest. Could be what our opponent is trying to do here. We're going to worry less about what they're trying to do, and we're going to focus more on what we're trying to do. And so we have the option, do we want Pack Runner or do we want Aerosmith? And I kind of feel like the upside here is going to be playing the Aerosmith, and then we're going to get down the Warpletinger. So if our opponent isn't able to remove this card, next turn we're likely just going to be playing spells, or we have the option of being able to play spells here and being able to get damage into our opponent's face. Unfortunately, they did have the silence there, and so we're going to be tickling our opponent with the small minions that are left on the board. Not totally surprising. We know Priest is going to be running 2 copies of that, and this is now a 50-50. And I think I'm just going to get down the weapon, go ahead and take a swing face, and we're going to get a secret into play here. And the question is, what do we want? I'm tempted to just bring down the zombies to try to counter the minion our opponent's going to put on the board, but
what to do?
I think at the end of the day, we just want to focus on trying to expand our own board and punching our opponent in the face. Again, not worried so much about what our opponent's doing, but trying to execute our game plan. And again, Priest, no surprise that they're running Shard of the Nauru. The card is really, really strong, but we don't necessarily want to try to play around that, simply because if you try to play around something like that with the deck that we're playing, then potentially you're just going to make very, very weak turns and just never be able to kill your opponent. We pretty much want to force them to have it. I think this was probably the worst animal companion that we could get.
Face your end.
I mean, we could take a trade on this, but I don't want to spend 5 mana just trading for a minion, so we're going to hang on to that most likely. We'll start with our secret. I'm going to take the motion denied here. Our opponent's likely going to play 3 cards in 1 turn, and we'll be able to get that damage in, which is going to be good. And then at this point, I think I just want to start trying to hero power every turn. So I'm going to spend a 3 mana aim shot, and then just hero power. And then again, every single turn, I'm going to want to make sure that I'm clicking on this button right here to be able to get that damage into our opponent's face. We do know they're running healing. Not necessarily sure what their win condition is going to be. But you can see here, potentially they could be taking 6 damage depending on how many cards they're going to play in this turn. Damage is going to add up fast. We do have quite a bit of damage in hand based on what our opponent's going to do. And you can see here, really not a whole lot going on just yet. And at this point, I feel like, taking a trade and giving up 1 damage seems good. It's going to save us quite a bit of damage. But I actually see a better way to make this turn. So I'm going to get down the Pack Runner. I'm going to quick shot my opponent in the face. We'll be able to make this trade, and then these guys can go face. And then again, I just want to make sure that I'm going to hero power every single turn. So we have 5 damage that we'll be able to play from hand next turn, potentially more if the Trampling Rhino is able to get some damage in here. So potentially we have a lethal setup. We're going to have to see what our opponent is able to put together. Also have the option of actually drawing an 8/8 Trampling Rhino with the Scavenger's Ingenuity. It would be a 50-50 with the Warpletinger that's still in the deck. And if our opponent doesn't have healing, I believe... And they actually take the 6 here, so I believe that's going to wrap up the game. You can see here, we were able to get there. Coming back in for another game, Warlock this time. Again, I just want to focus on my game plan because I have no idea what my opponent might be playing. So I'm going to keep the Ingenuity and the Spirit Poacher. Again, these would always be keeps, at least in my opinion. And the game plan here, again, is going to be Ingenuity on 2. Again, it'll be a 50-50. And actually now it's going to be a 2 out of 3, 67% to hit a Warpletinger, which is going to give us this on turn 3, as well as hopefully we're going to be able to hit a Warpletinger. And we're not going to be all that sad if we hit the other Trampling Rhino. It's just going to give us a little bit of a weaker play in the short term. Go ahead and get down the Spirit Poacher. It's interesting, this totally changed my play. Drawing the Wild Spirits, I wanted to go Spirit Poacher into Wild Spirits. If you have those, I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer. You just play this on 2, this on 3. And then we can Ingenuity on 4, potentially play the Warpletinger on 4, same turn that we play the Ingenuity. and then maybe drop a buff. We really just want to spend mana, play cards, punch our opponent in the face. And we're going to have to keep in mind, if they're playing this package, that they're going to be able to clear our board in a lot of cases. We're guaranteed for a Warpletinger now. And the fact that they're playing, like, Imps means that we should be able to get some value out of the Trampling Rhino. So we're going to keep to the plan. And we definitely want to take this trade. Then I'm just going to punch my opponent in the face. They do have that AoE card that's only going to hit my side of the board. And it's, as of right now, it's going to deal 3, so we're going to want to keep that in mind. End of the day, I think we're still just going to want to kill our opponent as quickly as possible here. We're also going to be able to go very wide with this Scavenger's Ingenuity. And then it was guaranteed to hit the Warpletinger. Only 4 beasts in the deck. We got 2 of these, 2 of these. So 2 4/4s. It's going to be really strong in this particular position. And then I'm going to lay the banana over here. I am going to take 1 trade. You want to be careful about over trading with this deck, but I feel like that's going to be a good value trade. And then I'm going to push into my opponent's face. It removes 1 imp. It's going to make this buff, you know, just 1 smaller. You only have 1 minion that can attack now. Could have still gone face. Maybe it wouldn't have made that much of a difference. But I just liked that trade. You can see we pick up the Tavish. And I'm just going to jam the Trampling Rhino here. It's going to be 4 damage face. And we're just really trying to set up lethal. You can see our opponent is dying super fast. They're at 4. We've got bananas, we've got a hero power, we've got a Trampling Rhino. They still have 1/1s on the board. So we're expecting to be able to win this game really on the next turn. And you can see again, we had no 1-drop. And it really just didn't make that much of a difference. Our opponent actually just loses here. They're not going to be able to clean this up enough to be able to survive, I don't think. And actually dead on board. Hearthstone Twist, Hearthstone's newest mode. I'm really excited about it. If you're interested in seeing more Hearthstone Twist decks, make sure you drop a like, drop a subscribe. I'm going to have a lot more decks on all the classes coming out in the very, very near future. And of course, as the Hearthstone Twist seasons rotate, there's going to be more and more Hearthstone decks to be able to play. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Uncorrupt, and good luck out on the ladder.